Hello and welcome to the Infinite Love Podcast, a place where we share stories on how love can transform negative emotions and pain into strength. We talk about all things related to love, positivity, and kindness. And I am your host, Carine Camara. Hello and welcome to episode 37, From Unawareness to Mindfulness. Neil is a leading international mindfulness expert, author, and presenter. He is the founder of The Conscious Professional and a pioneer of the Mindfulness and Conscious Leadership movement. He believes firmly in the possibility of bringing conscious solutions to the challenges of the world by inspiring individuals and businesses to adopt conscious models and supporting them as they do the work of transformation. Neil is the author of 2 books, Conscious Leadership and 100 Mindfulness Meditations. In this episode, Neil shares his story of listening to his soul's calling towards mindfulness. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, welcome to the Infinite Love Podcast. Today, our guest is Neil. Hi.
Hey, Carine.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's getting warmer in California, so it's exciting.
Yeah, here in London, the sun is out, it's blue skies, and it feels like spring. So it's a nice feeling.
Cool. I always want to start our podcast talking about the love lesson. And the love lesson is essentially a point in your life of huge transition that brought you to a place where you decided to shift your life into the career path or the life path or your purpose and bring that into the world. So I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, I've had a few actually, but I'm gonna go for the one that has probably had the biggest impact in terms of shifting my day-to-day reality. So I actually had that almost like a spiritual insight really in the car park after work one day. I was a trial lawyer at the time, so I was been practicing law, and a friend that I hadn't seen for a while bounded up to me and said, "Hey, how's it going, Neil? I hear you're one of the rising stars of the civil bar," which is in UK, it's kind of the barrister kind of world. And no one had said that to me before, but when he said that, what happened in my head was I heard, "Your star is rising in the wrong field, you have to leave." And that insight dropped in with such clarity and such truth that I really felt that I could do nothing else but follow that. So I gave up my career as a lawyer. It took a few months to wrap up my practice, and then have really just been, well, the first 3 years, I was really just in a state of inquiry again, like going back to nothing, going back to the beginning, like, who am I? All that sort of stuff. And luckily I was working with my meditation teacher, who I still am a student of now, some 13, 14 years on. And she taught me this process to kind of live from listening. And that allowed me to get quiet enough to kind of hear the lessons of my heart and the wisdoms of my body. And one day in a meditation, the name of my business landed, The Conscious Professional, with the logo. I saw it, and I was kind of told I was going to be teaching mindfulness, which this is 2012. And back in the UK, mindfulness wasn't really a thing at that point. So it was a bit of a double take moment, like, mindfulness, really? Are you sure? But I stuck with it, and the pursuit of that, which, I'd been a meditator since my late teens. I'd become a Reiki master in my late teens. I'd been on that path for a long time, but just hadn't really known how to commit to it. And then this insight came, and then it just allowed me to deepen my practice more and more and more, and until my practice now is kind of the central foundational core of my life, but also my business, my work. And my aspirations. And for me, that has really been the journey, moving out of head into heart, and then back to include the head again, right? Because it's not useless. But when I was in my, the first part of my career as a lawyer, I was very kind of head focused and analytical and success driven, and found myself in a spot where I was successful, but I didn't feel fulfilled or aligned in my life. So that's kind of been the latest bit of the journey, and that was the catalyst really for my work and for what I do in the world now.
Wow. So that's a big decision, leaving a stable, secure job, career path, and moving into something that's completely unknown, because that's pretty scary for a lot of
So
people.
it would be if it was a decision, but I did not make a decision. The insight landed inside me.
Mhm.
Because people sometimes say to me like, "Oh wow, that was really courageous," or "That was really dumb." It was like initially, like my parents are like, "What are you doing? Like you've given up all of this training, which was expensive, and like what are you doing?" And even like my peers around me were like, "You're kind of doing well. What's all this about?" But that moment for me wasn't a moment of courage. It was a moment of truth. Like that insight felt so true. There was no questioning it. And then it was literally, okay, what's next? Like, how do I take my next steps from here, given that this is the new reality? So looking back on it, I can see, both the stupidity and the courage that was in there. But at the time, it was just, no, this is what's happening. This is my truth. Yeah.
It's great that you listen to it, because I feel like most people get those truths and they're just like, they brush it aside and let their mind take over of all the reasons why they shouldn't follow their heart.
This was like a really noisy one, because I'm so guilty of also like,
Yeah.
I can look back into certain relationships I've been in where, my voice of truth was saying, get out, and I was ignoring it. And, so I've had that experience too.
Yeah.
This insight was, it's like a gong going off inside me. It wasn't the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And so you shifted your life. Now you're a meditation teacher. Now, how do you work with clients? Do you do one-to-one, or you do groups? Like, how do you teach people how to meditate? Because so many of us have the monkey mind and we can't sit still.
Yeah. So, through a number of different ways, actually. So the business that I founded was really about bringing mindful education to busy professionals. So, the corporate focus. And over the years, I've, in fact, even before I set up my business, I was already doing Reiki healings, and that turned into kind of meditation tuition and little bits of coaching and things. So I was kind of already doing that. And then over the years, as I went more into the corporate sphere, I started working more with professionals and executives, and now senior leaders, and helping them bring. So it's not just about mindfulness tuition. It's really about this whole idea of how can we upgrade our professional consciousness in order to operate with more health, well-being, and happiness, but also in a conscious way, so that we're integrated with reality in a holistic, heartful synthesis, rather than a sort of dog-eat-dog kind of way, which is a zero-sum game at the end of it. We're kind of looking down the barrel of the reality of that on our planet right now. And so the motivation is starting to be there, even from a sort of business idea of if you're running Disneyland in a place which is going to be underwater in 50 years, maybe you care more about climate change now, or or whatever. So there's these realities are starting to bite in a way which is really saying, we're not messing around with this consciousness stuff. You've actually got to do the work now, because if we don't upgrade our awareness to take in the reality that we're part of a bigger whole, then it doesn't look great. It doesn't look great in terms of outcomes for us.
No. Yeah, the world is shifting and we have to move with it.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, you and I, we're in the same world, so this kind of conversation doesn't feel foreign. But for some people, it's like that whole concept of what you spoke about just feels like, how do I even incorporate that when all I know is to go to work, survive? I can't even think about consciousness. That doesn't even pop into my mind. Like, what are words of insight that you can give someone that is not even aware of this world that we're talking about, but is interested in learning how to move into it?
Yeah. So, we all have an awareness of consciousness because it's our primary reality, right? It's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a thing to do. So every single one of us in every moment has to start exactly where we are. And if we're caught up in a world of busyness and survival, and there's a sort of luxury and privilege almost to the ability to contemplate these things, yet we are all functioning through consciousness. And so the starting point is really kindness, because there's always ways in which we can be kinder to ourselves through the moments of our lives, whatever they are. There are always ways that we can tend to our awareness by reaching out to our network, by gifting ourselves some spacious moments. I know that can be hard, but they don't have to be long. Even setting in little moments throughout the day where we're taking a conscious breath. When people realize that the power of breathing consciously is to bring the mind and the body into the same present moment reality, which immediately is soothing to the body. Once we feel that in our body and can experience that and go on the flow of that, and it's such an easy thing to do, and it's such a quick practice, that we can start just there. Like, doesn't have to be let's climb up the mountain and do the whole thing. Like, we don't need to do that. But we, in every day, every single one of us, myself included, I'm sure yourself included, we can all be kinder to ourselves today rather than yesterday. So yeah, I think, yes, consciousness and awareness might seem like a bit of a heady thing, but actually, it's something that we're in and of anyway. So, looking around and getting a bit of a sense of it from a slightly different angle, maybe, I think can be illuminating, whatever kind of starting point we're coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you said the kindness bit, because that's something I talk about frequently with my clients and with my friends and with everyone, because it's that piece of being kind to others and treating others how we want to be treated. And I feel like that is everything. If you can't do one thing, you can at least be kind to someone else, because that's totally free. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's can change so many people's lives. Even just a smile or a kind word or a motivational word, it makes the world of difference. And sometimes giving kindness to someone, you don't even know what that person's going through, and maybe that kindness shifted their whole day.
Yeah. And that whole kind of, the way in which our anxious thoughts sit in our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
We all know what it feels like to hold a lot of anxious thoughts, and we also know what it feels like to have a connective conversation with someone where we share some of our anxieties, and how that eases our load a little bit and seems to have a kind of transformative effect even in a small way in our own experience. And so, this type of cultivation of mindful awareness, it's almost like you're having a conversation with a friend, but with yourself. You're learning to treat yourself like a good friend. And so there is, some of this work of contemplation, of inquiry that we can do, um, is giving us skills to kind of work through the heaviness of some of our worries, the judgments we place upon ourselves, and the attachments we have to certain potential realities, and so on. So yeah, there's everyone has their way in, and so I'm sure in your client work as well, people always tell you why they've come at some point in the first conversation, and then there's always small gifts, small tools that can be offered to help people on that journey. And from my beginning of my journey of spiritual inquiry and mindfulness, I did it because I was curious and interested in it generally, but I kept doing it because it was really useful. Like, it became a powerful resource in my life. It enabled me to have access to different levels of my functioning that I had not experienced before. And so, for me, I always encourage people to experiment with different practices. And then, if the practice should kind of lead you on at a certain point, we have to put a bit of discipline in at the beginning to start a new habit. But at some point, you should be like, okay, this is something which I can feel a difference. I can feel myself in a way, I might be liking myself a little bit more today. I might be noticing I can be a little kinder to the grocery shop assistant. I can, these small things where you're like, wow, my road rage was like a 7, where it'd normally be a 10, this kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I think that people don't understand how you're getting back pieces of yourself. Like, the more you go into yourself and discover who you are, you can get back these qualities that we've had. I mean, I believe that a lot of us are born with these qualities, but then they get shoved down because of life circumstances and trauma and all of this. But ultimately, we're all beings of love that care about each other, that want to do good things. And of course, there are evil people in the world, but there are mostly good people. And I feel like a lot of our goodness gets pushed away because of circumstances and doing all these different things. And so it's really interesting when you're saying that contemplation, where you start having more access to who you are and more access to your heart, being able to talk to people differently, communicate differently, and not hold so much fear and anxiety in your body, and come from a place of love and compassion. And it does take work it does take some work to uncover who you are and be willing to hire coaches and people to help you on the way, because I feel like I wouldn't have been able to do it without my mentors and teachers that have helped me get to a place of more peace.
Yeah. And yeah, you know, I work with several coaches and teachers, and yeah, you need a team, right?
Yeah, you do. And I also think it's important because it's the reflection. Because, when I was in my dark moments, or when I am in my dark moments, I don't necessarily have that mirror of my potential and my beauty, because I'm in this dark place. And a teacher or a good friend will be able to pull me out and say, hey, this is where I see you at. This is who you are. Like, you can get there. You just have to go through all of this, or you need to go whatever you need to go through, but you don't have to stay there, which has been helpful. Because when I was a kid and I didn't have tools, you're kind of stuck in this place of not knowing what to do or how to feel or how to get out of it. And I think it's important to learn these techniques that you're mentioning to actually, or that you've gone through, to pull yourself out of it.
Definitely. Yeah. And we all find our own tools and techniques along the way, and there's no right path. It's except for your path, and you discover
Exactly.
it, go along, and it doesn't make sense until you look back along it, you're like, oh, that makes sense. But as you're looking forward, it makes no sense. Like, so
Yeah, that's where the trust comes in, right?
exactly. And actually, even though it's terrifying at points, it's also, that's kind of the joy of it too. The vulnerability of it all, the tragedy of it all, the ups, the downs, the joys, the sorrows. It's all part of a life lived well, is kind of showing up for all of that.
Yeah, hindsight is always interesting. And I think for me, I do it for like remembrance, like remembering what I went through and how I got myself out of it. So whenever I think of something, I'm like, oh, I remember I went through this, this, and that, and I survived. Just thinking about the evolution of the soul, the evolution of your life. It's fascinating, especially if you can look at it from an observation, like watching it like a movie,
Yeah.
and all the things that you've gone through. And it's fascinating. I think just this whole world of mindfulness and connecting to people in that space, it's like never ending discovery of the nuances of people and how they react to things and how they feel about things and how they hold on to things. It's just always like, wow, people are just so different. Every single one is unique in how they
People are
process life.
amazing, aren't they? I love meeting people and kind of just seeing that kind of jewel flower kind of blossom and open. And it's kind of been interesting during kind of COVID times when we're doing everything virtually. Probably meet more people maybe, but the in-person thing isn't there, so it feels a little bit different. But yeah, it is a wondrous joy, this human journey, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the virtual thing is interesting because I feel like, at least for me, I feel like I have to work a bit harder to capture people's attention because we don't have the luxury of being face to face. But then there's opportunities where I could talk to people like you that, you're in London, hours away from me.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, this whole thing. I feel like I've talked to more people since COVID because I'm like, okay, I can't go outside. So thank God for internet. Because
Yeah.
if this was happening in like the 90s or late 80s, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah. We're still on dial-up
Right?
modem.
Oh
Or,
my
yeah.
God. And I was a kid then. So I would have been stuck at home with no internet. I don't know how I would have done school. Like it would have been crazy.
Yeah, me too. Um, yeah.
So I was really grateful it happened when it happened,
Yeah.
at least for me, that I'm not a kid, because I feel bad for the kids because they're kind of stuck at home. But
Yeah. I feel bad for people at the beginning of things.
hmm
Like, like your first year out of university, your first year in university, your first year at a job, like when it's kind of the whole system of that physical world that picks you up and goes, "Ooh, here's your new kind of
right.
chapter." Whereas you're now like, oh, this is I'm in my bedroom at work or at uni. So I feel bad for people at the beginning of things.
Yeah, it's a new reality, and it'll be interesting to see how we move forward post COVID and how the world will start to interact with each other. Because it's sad to me when I see little kids on the street like running away from people because their whole reality has been to stay away from people.
Yeah,
And one of the biggest things for me about being human is our connection, our physical connection. And we're so social. We're like social beings, like hugging and being in each other's presence. And I'm excited for that to come back, to like be able to hug someone and not worry, like,
yeah,
is anyone watching? Like, what's happening?
yeah. I feel you. I feel you. The hugs are, they will come back. They'll
Yeah,
come
they
back.
will. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
it'll all
excited.
come back. But we will have kind of been through this crucible transmutation bubbling pot of something.
Yeah.
And we'll have been able to connect internationally much better than we have done before. We'll have learned new ways of kind of networking and collaborating and sharing stuff. And, I think there'll be a kind of acceleration of consciousness as a result of the deepening of this level of connection, because the other stuff will come back online. I think if it hadn't been taken offline, we wouldn't have kind of upgraded all of this stuff.
True.
And I think it's required now. So
Yeah, a lot of people took this opportunity to become more mindful, to go within, start to look at themselves in a different way. I feel like a lot of the conversations are different because of this time that people have to actually start to look around and be like, okay, how can I shift my life and how can I be better in what I want to do? So that's one of the positives, I think, as well.
yeah, I feel like there's a kind of vibrational shift that's kind of gone on. And I noticed that through kind of the permission I feel to speak more directly about the things that I do in my work. So I feel more permission post, not that we're post, but now we're a year through COVID than before. Feels like, yeah, there's more welcoming of the ideas around consciousness. And I wrote a book on conscious leadership in 2019, but it feels like the energy of that is starting to come online now. So yeah, really interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the infinite love questions.
Let's do it.
How do you use love in your work?
So I guess maybe a more relevant question would be, how do I not use love in my work? Because I think a lot of my own journey has been to open my heart. And so that when I'm standing in front of a room full of brainy, busy people who may rather be doing something else, that they pick up on that frequency as much as they pick up on the rest of what I'm sharing. That there is a kind of an invitation in my work, even though I might not talk about it openly, except in loving kindness practices and type of meta mindfulness practices that we do. That there is a kind of intention to bring people towards their heart, because I think that's one of the most important kind of upgrades that we really need to go through, is kind of connecting up heart and vision, and interacting with each other in the world from that perspective.
Yes. How's your work used to serve humanity?
So my my work is really about consciousness. So when I talk about conscious leadership or mindfulness, or emotional intelligence or well-being, the invitation is for people to take the next step on their journey, because I think we have really gnarly, complex problems that the world is facing, and we need more people to be able to be stable around challenging information, to hold it steady, to remain connected to each other, and to a kind of higher vision of what might be possible, in order to bring through conscious solutions to these problems. And that's going to require a lot of us to be getting out of our fight or flight, scarcity, dog eat dog mindset, to achieve that level of collaboration and synergy. So kind of sitting behind all of my work is really the intention to catalyze conscious creativity. Sometimes that's through teaching mindfulness. Sometimes it's by having a nice chat with a lovely podcast host. In all the different ways that I work, that intention kind of sits there.
Okay, I love that. So what does it mean to you personally to be a positive force of goodness in the world?
I would say that's just something I'm dedicated to. That is something that I have a very powerful commitment to, which is a sort of multi-layered commitment that has revealed itself to me over time, because it's something I've been on the journey with since my teens. And, as each kind of chapter has unfolded, my commitment has kind of deepened to it. So, my intention is to be and do that, and to also be aware of when I don't do that in my own life, and to bring awareness to that, and to it's a sort of, it's the destination I'm heading to, rather than somewhere that I feel I'm at, on that journey.
Okay. It's never ending, right? Even there's always more love to give, more things to learn about ourselves. So that's like the beauty of this type of work.
Yeah.
What do you love most about your life?
I love that I get to choose everything that I do. I love that I have a beautiful partner, Jack, and beautiful chocolate Labrador, and that we have a really fun family relationship, and I'm really grateful for that. I love the work that I do. I love the fact that I did listen to that insight that came, because I think if I was a barrister now fighting trials, I'd probably be a little bit gnarly and bitter for not having paid attention. And I also love that I've learned that this kind of practice of cultivating aligned conscious living, whilst messy and terrifying at times, that I'm capable of flowing with the ups and downs of it more than I expected myself to be able to. So yeah, there's a lot. Sorry, there's a big list of things I love about my life.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very fortunate and grateful.
How do you feel you receive love?
How do I feel I receive love? So I'm just getting a vision of, like, through every pore.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a sense of, because the vibration of harmony or love, love and life, like the energy of life and love, to me, it's kind of almost a oneness there. And the more I've kind of decompressed my my life, my thinking, my mind, my lifestyle, the more I'm able to notice that, because I think it was always there, but my mind kind of was putting up certain fences around it, because there was like little contracts I'd formed of, oh, I have to do this to be successful, I have to do this to please my parents, I have to do this to win in society, I have to do this to do a good job at work, I have to do this, and this. And as I peeled these layers off, they don't have to be straight, all of those types of things, I peeled all of these things off through my life, and kind of settle into a space of, actually, I can live intentionally, that the universe isn't out to get me,
Right.
that I can make it work, that I don't need much, and that I can also be abundant when I, work well, and all the rest of it. It's more as my experience of it is kind of releasing into the love that is right here, like the vibration of life is actually, to me, a very loving vibration. So yeah, I'm not sure if that was
That's a
clear
great
on.
answer, because it feels like it's just pretty much opening up yourself to what's already available.
Right.
Right.
I've never
And
really thought of it like that before, but yeah.
yeah, you're just kind of like, it's already here, so I'm just going to allow it to come to me, as opposed to creating resistance, which is essentially almost circling back to what we said earlier about allowing your self-identity to come through.
Yeah.
Releasing whatever's blocking you from getting there. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. So when do you feel the most love?
So that is with when I'm with the people I'm closest to. And so for the first time in like 5 months or something, I met up with my mum and dad and my brother and sister-in-law and niece and nephew, and that was a big love explosion because we'd been apart for so long, and finally we could meet up and see each other. I'm moving house at the moment, which is why there's nothing in this room and it's a bit echoey, sorry. And my partner and I, Jack, we went and viewed the property that we're moving into again today, and so like a really sort of upswelling of love between us, like that we created this. It's actually been really hard work shifting places and all the stuff you go through, but yeah, so that's in connection. And then the other is in my meditation practice. Not always, but in certain practices and sometimes unexpectedly, there are kind of waves of that vibration which come through.
Nice. So my last question is, where do you feel love created a miracle in your life?
Okay, so I've been with Jack for 7 years, and about a year before I met him, I knew I was going to meet him. I kind of, I don't know how it happened, but there was this one moment. I was in the sea in Florida, Miami Beach, and I was on my own at the time, and this sort of knowing came in that he was coming, and I just like did all these dolphin flips, and I don't know, I was just like super sure. And then he came along, and it was that moment, the first time that we held hands, and I put my hand on his, and it's like, you have the same energy in your hand as I do. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, it's good. This is good news. That will be a second date. Yeah, so that feels like a little miracle.
It is. That's beautiful. I love that. Well, this has been such a beautiful, I feel like your energy is so calm, and it's such a nice, like, calming, peaceful discussion. So thank you so much for being here. And how can people find you and get connected to your work?
Yeah, thank you. It's been beautiful talking to you. And yeah, if people would like to connect further, my public website is neilseligman.com. And the corporate side is theconsciousprofessional.com. I've got 2 books out. So one is 100 Mindfulness Meditations, which is like a recipe book of meditations to inspire practice. And then Conscious Leadership is really the journey of mindfulness applied to the journey of leadership. So both of those are available in most good places. So yeah, people are very welcome to connect with me on socials and all the rest of it. You can find me pretty easily.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I am sending you lots of love, and hopefully the rest of your move is smooth and peaceful.
Lots of love to you, Carine. Thank you so much for today.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and tune in on Tuesdays for new episodes. For more information about me, please follow me on Instagram at Carine J. Camara and my website, CarineCamara.com. Sending you lots of infinite love.